There's a silent war happening inside most of us, a battle we rarely talk about, not because it's invisible, but because we've normalized it. Waking up feeling drained, drifting through the day with a foggy mind, struggling to feel joy, motivation, or connection. We blame our routines, our jobs, our screens, even the weather. But at the core of it all, there's something deeper. Our brain's chemistry is out of balance. And one of the most overlooked elements in that equation is dopamine. Dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical, it's the molecule of motivation. It's what drives you to get up, to focus, to strive, to feel satisfaction. When dopamine levels are healthy, life feels lighter. Your energy has direction, your emotions have space to breathe. But when it drops, everything begins to feel heavier, even the simplest of tasks. And in today's world, with overstimulation on one end and chronic exhaustion on the other, many people are unknowingly running on empty. But the good news is this: dopamine is not out of your reach. You don't need a prescription to feel alive again. You don't need to escape your life to rebuild your inner fire. There are natural, powerful ways to rewire your brain, to restore balance, awaken motivation, and feel grounded in your own mind again. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. These 10 practices aren't about perfection, they're about reconnection, about reclaiming the small, overlooked habits that hold the power to shift your entire emotional landscape. If you've been feeling stuck, numb, or simply not like yourself, this episode is for you. Because when you learn to boost dopamine the right way, slowly, intentionally, consistently, you don't just feel better, you become better, clearer, stronger, more in tune with who you really are. Let's begin this journey, not as a chase for happiness, but as a return to balance, to presence, to energy that flows from within, not from outside approval. Because your mental and emotional well-being aren't luxuries. They're the foundation of everything. And now, it's time to rebuild that foundation, one step at a time. 1. Move, even slowly. Have you ever noticed how different the world feels after a short walk? Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. The fog lifts, the tension loosens. You start to think more clearly, breathe more fully, and feel more like yourself. That's not a coincidence. It's not just fresh air or clearing your head. What's happening inside your brain is chemical. Movement, even simple, slow, non-strenuous movement, increases dopamine production. And dopamine is the spark behind motivation, joy, and emotional stability. In a society obsessed with performance, we often treat movement as a chore, a number, a goal. 10,000 steps, 45-minute workouts, calories burned. But the body doesn't need spectacle to heal. It just needs to move. Dopamine doesn't wait for the perfect gym session. It responds to rhythm, to flow, to the gentle return of breath, blood, and balance. Let's be honest. When we're feeling low, depressed, anxious, or disconnected, movement is usually the first thing we stop doing. We sit, we scroll, we sleep too much, we spiral. But ironically, that's the exact moment when movement is most needed. Not to impress, not to push, but to reset. Because every form of stagnation, physical or emotional, is a signal that something inside needs motion, not more thought. And this isn't modern wellness jargon. The Stoics knew it over 2,000 years ago. Cleanthes, one of the early Stoics, was a manual laborer. He worked through the night hauling water and spent his days in study and contemplation. For him, physical work wasn't separate from mental clarity. It was the gateway to it. He moved his body so his thoughts could stay sharp. That was his rhythm. That was his discipline. And this idea doesn't require ancient robes or modern fitness apps to apply. Let's say you're overwhelmed by work. Your instinct might be to sit longer, grind harder, solve it with more thinking. But what if the solution is a 10-minute walk outside? What if the movement itself, the break, the rhythm, the sunlight, the silence, shifts your mental chemistry just enough to give you back your clarity? Even on a neurological level, movement helps regulate not just dopamine, but serotonin, norepinephrine, and endorphins, the entire orchestra of your emotional well-being. It doesn't erase problems, it changes your capacity to face them. And here's the best part. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to run. You don't need fancy shoes. You don't need to track anything. You just need to begin. You can start right now, standing up and stretching your arms, moving your neck gently, walking barefoot through your home with intention. If you're able, go outside. Let your senses meet the real world, not the one in your phone. Do it not because you're broken. Do it because your body was never meant to be still for so long. Do it because motion is truth. Because a mind in motion finds more answers than a mind in isolation. And because healing isn't a dramatic act, it's the slow, steady return to something simple. Presence. Make movement part of your daily rhythm, not as punishment, but as permission. Permission to reconnect with yourself. Permission to release stress instead of storing it. Permission to feel your body again, not as a burden, but as an ally. So ask yourself right now, what kind of movement can I give myself today? Not what the world expects, not what looks good online. What does your body need? Trust it, honor it, then move, even slowly. Because in that movement, dopamine flows, and with it, a deeper sense of being alive returns. 2. Eat with wisdom, not emotion. What's the first thing many of us reach for when we're sad, bored, or overwhelmed? Not silence, not breath, not reflection. We reach for food, not because we're hungry, but because we're hurting. And for a brief moment, that bite of something sweet, salty, or comforting seems to numb the noise. But here's what we rarely consider. Every time we eat emotionally, we're not just feeding our bodies, we're rewiring our brains. And more often than not, we're disrupting the natural balance of our most powerful neurotransmitters, including dopamine. Dopamine is deeply connected to nutrition. What you eat literally determines how your brain functions, how you feel emotionally, and how motivated or foggy you become. Protein-rich foods, healthy fats, and foods high in the amino acid tyrosine are the building blocks of dopamine. They help your brain generate the fuel it needs to focus, to act, and to feel steady. But when you replace real nourishment with sugar spikes, processed comfort, or emotional binging, you might feel better for 10 minutes, and worse for the rest of the day. The Stoics wouldn't have talked about amino acids or neurochemistry, but they understood something timeless. Discipline in what you consume leads to clarity in how you think. Seneca once said, "Drunkenness is nothing but voluntary madness." He wasn't only referring to alcohol, he was warning us about any form of overindulgence that clouds the mind and weakens our will. And food, especially in moments of stress or sadness, often becomes that form of escape. So the question isn't, what should I eat to lose weight? Or what's trendy right now? The question is, what kind of food helps me feel mentally clear and emotionally steady? That's a very different conversation. It's not about guilt or shame, it's about awareness. How does your body respond after you eat? How does your mind respond 2 hours later? Did that meal give you energy, or did it drain it? Let's take it further. Suppose you start your day with protein, greens, and hydration. What you've just done, before checking your phone, before dealing with the outside world, is send a message to your brain. I value stability over stimulation. You've built dopamine naturally, not through caffeine or sugar, but through real nourishment. And your body will respond with clarity. Your emotions will be less volatile. Your cravings will be quieter. You'll feel more anchored. Now contrast that with skipping meals or emotionally overeating late at night. You wake up groggy, unmotivated. Your blood sugar crashes mid-morning. You start seeking dopamine through external means, scrolling, snacking, snapping at people. And it's not because you're lazy or undisciplined. It's because your brain chemistry is trying to compensate for what your food didn't provide. This is why eating with wisdom is one of the greatest acts of self-respect. Not clean eating, not perfection, wisdom. The quiet knowledge that says, this is how I want to feel, so this is what I choose to put into my body. That's not a diet. That's identity. That's self-mastery. And yes, it takes effort. It takes awareness to ask, am I actually hungry, or am I avoiding something? It takes strength to step away from the quick fix. But every time you choose nourishment over numbing, you strengthen your emotional core. You tell your nervous system, I don't need to run. I can sit, I can feel, I can respond, not react. Food is information. Every bite is a message to your cells, your mood, your motivation. And when you choose wisely, when you build your meals with intention, you're not just feeding your body, you're shaping your future mental state, one plate at a time. So the next time you stand in front of the fridge or open a cabinet in a moment of stress, pause, breathe, ask yourself, what do I actually need right now? Maybe it's fuel, maybe it's rest, maybe it's connection, maybe it's simply to be still. Don't just feed your feelings, feed your future, because what you consume becomes what you feel. And if you want to feel strong, clear, and motivated, your food has to reflect that choice. 3. Sleep like you're rebooting your soul. When was the last time you truly rested, not just closed your eyes, but gave your body and mind permission to reset completely? In a world that glamorizes hustle and burns out in silence, sleep is often treated like an afterthought, as if rest were a luxury, not a necessity, as if you could just keep pushing, caffeinating, powering through, without consequences. But here's the truth. Your nervous system never stops whispering. Sleep is not optional. It's a biological non-negotiable. And when you skip it, rush it, or disrespect it, your brain stops functioning the way it's meant to, especially when it comes to dopamine. Dopamine production is highly dependent on deep, restorative sleep. During the night, your brain performs a kind of internal housekeeping. It clears out toxins, resets your hormonal balance, and restores the neurotransmitters that keep you emotionally regulated. Without quality sleep, your dopamine receptors become less sensitive, which means you need more stimulation to feel the same motivation, and eventually you stop feeling much at all. Have you noticed how the smallest problems feel overwhelming after a bad night's sleep? Or how your patience runs thin, your motivation disappears, and everything feels emotionally louder? That's not just being tired. That's your brain operating with diminished chemistry. It's trying to function with its internal battery drained, and it can't. Not well, not sustainably. The Stoics may not have had sleep studies or neuroscience, but they understood the connection between rest and reason. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to get up and do the work of a human being, but he also knew the value of preparation. And rest is preparation. It's what allows you to meet the world not as a scattered, reactive mess, but as a calm, clear, capable force. Without it, your philosophy becomes theory. With it, it becomes practice. And yet, many of us trade sleep for false productivity. We stay up late finishing tasks, doom scrolling or numbing out in front of a screen. We think we're getting more done, but really, we're stealing from tomorrow. From our clarity, our emotional resilience, our ability to show up fully. One of the most powerful decisions you can make for your mental and emotional well-being isn't to work harder, it's to sleep better. This doesn't mean perfection. You don't need 8 hours every single night, but you do need rhythm, consistency, a sacred boundary around your evening, one that says, "This time is mine. This is when I reboot my soul." Dim the lights. Shut down the noise. Let your mind unwind. Give yourself the gift of transition, from the doing to the being, from the noise to the stillness. And no, it won't always be easy. You'll be tempted to check one more message, to finish one more task. But remember this, a tired mind doesn't think, it complains. It doesn't solve problems, it creates them. If you want better days, start with better nights. Protect your sleep like your future depends on it, because it does. Make your room a sanctuary, cool, dark, quiet. No stimulation, no judgment, just a space where you're allowed to let go, to fall, to heal. And if sleep is hard for you, start small, consistent times. No screens an hour before bed, gentle sounds, deep breathing. Not because you're chasing perfect sleep, but because you're honoring your mind's deepest need to rest and reset. So ask yourself, what would change in my life if I started taking my sleep as seriously as my goals? Because every night you honor rest, you're investing in the clarity, energy, and focus of the next day. You're building a foundation that no supplement or morning routine can replace. You can't outrun fatigue, but you can outsmart it by making sleep a ritual of self-respect. Reboot your soul. Night by night. 4. Sit with yourself in stillness. When was the last time you were truly alone with your thoughts, without a screen, a task, or a distraction in front of you? Not scrolling, not planning, not trying to be productive, just sitting, breathing, listening, in silence. For most people today, that kind of stillness feels unnatural, even uncomfortable, but it's in that stillness where healing begins. It's where dopamine restores itself, not through stimulation, but through presence. It's where the nervous system finds balance, and it's where your mind returns home. We live in an age of endless noise, notifications, algorithms, background music, to-do lists. Our senses are bombarded by inputs, and while they might keep us occupied, they leave us disconnected from our inner voice, from clarity, from emotion, from truth. The Stoics understood this long before the digital age. They believed the mind must be trained not only to think well, but to sit well, to endure silence, to face itself without flinching. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That wasn't poetic advice, that was a command to retreat inward, not to escape life, but to return to it more present. And from a scientific standpoint, stillness, through practices like meditation and mindfulness, directly increases dopamine and serotonin levels. It strengthens your brain's ability to regulate emotion. It rewires the mind for clarity and calm. But more than that, stillness gives you back your power. When you sit in silence, even for 5 minutes, you step out of reactivity. You stop running from feeling. You allow emotion to rise, to breathe, and to settle. You begin to observe your thoughts instead of becoming them. You create space between the impulse and the action. And in that space is where transformation lives. Let's ground this in something real. Suppose you're feeling overwhelmed. Normally, you might reach for your phone, call someone, eat something, distract yourself. But instead, you stop, you sit, you breathe. You ask, what am I actually feeling right now? You don't analyze it, you witness it. And suddenly, the noise softens. The emotion loses its grip. The part of your brain that fuels dopamine, your reward and motivation system, begins to activate not from outside stimulation, but from your ability to simply be present with what is. This is why people who meditate regularly often report feeling more motivated, more emotionally balanced, more focused, not because they're escaping the world, but because they're facing it from a place of inner stillness. And stillness doesn't have to mean sitting cross-legged in silence for an hour. It can be a quiet morning alone with a cup of tea. It can be 10 minutes with your eyes closed before you start your day. It can be a mindful walk with no phone, just breath and footsteps. The form doesn't matter, the intention does. You're not performing stillness. You're remembering who you are beneath the noise. So ask yourself, what would happen if I gave myself 5 minutes of undistracted silence every day? Would you find clarity, peace, grief you've been avoiding? Maybe, and all of that is okay. Because stillness doesn't always feel good. But it always brings truth. And truth is the first step toward healing, growth, and mental resilience. You don't need to be a monk. You just need to be willing to pause, to sit, to hear the voice beneath the chaos. Because only in silence do we truly hear our own. And sometimes that voice, once heard, is all you need to find your way back. 5. Set goals and celebrate small wins. Have you ever noticed how good it feels to cross something off your list, even something small? It's not about the task itself, it's about momentum, a sense of progress, a signal to your brain that you're moving forward, no matter how slowly. That feeling, that rush of satisfaction, that's dopamine. And it's one of the most powerful natural motivators your brain has, if you learn how to work with it instead of against it. Dopamine thrives on achievement, but not just big milestones. It responds to progress, to movement, to evidence that you're no longer standing still. The problem is, most people wait too long to feel proud of themselves. They only celebrate when they make it, when they lose all the weight, get the job, finish the book, heal completely. And in doing so, they rob their brains of the very reward signals that would help them stay consistent. The Stoics were not obsessed with success, but they understood the importance of direction. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That's goal setting at its most honest. Not a fantasy, not wishful thinking, a clear decision, followed by consistent action. And that consistency is what gives birth to motivation. Not inspiration, not luck, but small intentional effort repeated daily. Let's break this down practically. Suppose you have a big goal, like improving your health, writing a book, changing careers, or developing emotional resilience. If you wait to feel good only when you've reached the finish line, you'll burn out. Your brain will feel deprived. But if you set micro goals, drink a glass of water in the morning, write 100 words, take one deep breath instead of reacting, and then acknowledge those wins, dopamine flows. You train your brain to associate effort with reward. And this isn't just psychological fluff. Research shows that when we recognize and celebrate small wins, we reinforce neural pathways that make us more likely to keep going. We literally rewire ourselves to enjoy the process, not just the result. Think of a child learning to walk. Every step is celebrated. Every stumble is encouragement. Why do we stop doing that for ourselves as adults? Why do we dismiss progress just because it's not perfect? You don't build greatness overnight. You build it one honest decision at a time. And every one of those decisions is a brick in the foundation of who you're becoming. So make it a practice. Set goals, but make them real, attainable. Then track your wins, not for public applause, for yourself, for your own psychology. Keep a small journal, a note on your phone, a quiet smile at the end of the day that says, I showed up today. I moved forward. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's dopamine being built intentionally, as a tool, not a trick. And don't underestimate what this does emotionally. Every time you celebrate a small win, you give your nervous system hope. You remind yourself that change is possible. You replace despair with direction. And slowly, your self-image shifts. You stop seeing yourself as stuck and start seeing yourself as someone in motion. Someone who shows up even when it's hard. Someone who keeps promises even if they're small. So ask yourself now, what is one small thing I can do today that moves me closer to who I want to become? Then do it and celebrate it, not with fireworks, with awareness, with presence, with the quiet pride that says, I did what I said I would do. Because he who rejoices in one step, one honest, quiet step, will one day reach the summit, not because he rushed, but because he never stopped walking. 6. Listen to music that moves you. Have you ever played a song and suddenly everything changed? Your mood, your energy, your entire emotional state. That's not magic, that's dopamine. Music doesn't just entertain us, it moves us quite literally. Neuroscience shows that listening to music we enjoy activates the brain's reward system, increasing dopamine levels and creating feelings of pleasure, connection, and even clarity. It's why a song from 10 years ago can bring back a forgotten memory. It's why certain melodies make you want to cry, not out of sadness, but recognition. Because music speaks in a language beyond thought. It reaches the parts of us words often can't. And here's the beauty. It's accessible, immediate, intimate. You don't need therapy, a journal, or a plan. You just need sound, carefully chosen, deeply felt. In the Stoic world, while music wasn't a core tenet, the idea of harmonizing with life, of tuning your inner state to something higher, absolutely was. Seneca wrote often about the importance of rhythm and emotional discipline. What is music if not rhythm personified? When you feel low, heavy, or foggy, music can serve as a bridge, a way out, a hand reaching into the darkness that says, you're not alone. You can shift this moment. And the best part? It doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't ask you to talk, to solve, to explain. It simply offers you an emotional mirror, or sometimes an emotional reset. Let's get practical. You're stuck. You can't focus. You're anxious or flat. Before you reach for another cup of coffee or scroll aimlessly, try this. Close your eyes. Put on a piece of music that truly resonates with you. Not background noise, not filler, but something with meaning. Let it wash over you. Feel where it lands in your body. Notice how your breath changes. Notice if your thoughts soften. This is not escapism. This is recalibration. Different music serves different states. Uplifting music can raise energy and spark motivation. Calming music can lower stress and bring you back into your body. Instrumental or classical music can improve focus by stimulating creative flow without overwhelming the mind. And sometimes sad music is exactly what you need, not to deepen pain, but to give it space to breathe and leave. But the key is intentionality. Don't just consume music the way you consume noise. Choose it. Curate your emotional environment. Use sound as a tool, a companion in your healing, your thinking, your growing. Create playlists that serve your different states. Mornings, reflection, movement, rest, and let them be yours. Not what's trending, what touches you. You'd be surprised how often motivation doesn't come from logic or routine, but from a single song that shakes the dust off your soul and reminds you who you are. That's the hidden power of sound, not as distraction, as alignment. And emotionally, this changes everything. You begin to realize that you don't always need to fix how you feel. Sometimes you just need to feel it fully and let it move through you. And music gives you that space, that movement, that release. So ask yourself, what's the soundtrack to the version of me I'm becoming? What music awakens that part of you that's been quiet for too long? Play it, feel it, let it do its quiet work, because what cannot be said in words, music can carry. 7. Surround yourself with nourishing relationships. Have you ever left a conversation feeling lighter, more seen, more alive? And have you ever left another feeling completely drained, misunderstood, or quietly ashamed of yourself? That contrast isn't just emotional, it's chemical. Relationships shape your brain. The people you allow into your life directly influence your dopamine levels, your emotional resilience, your motivation, and even your self-worth. Human connection isn't just nice to have. It's necessary for mental and emotional health. Dopamine increases in the presence of genuine connection, and not the surface-level kind, not the endless texting, forced small talk, or attention-chasing interactions. What your nervous system craves, what your soul craves, is authentic presence. Being with someone who actually listens, not just waits to speak. Someone who sees you beyond your role, your mask, or your current struggle. Someone who doesn't demand you be more, but who naturally reminds you of who you already are. The Stoics spoke often of friendship, but not the kind based on convenience or benefit. Seneca wrote, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood." That kind of bond nourishes your mind. It strengthens your inner world, gives you perspective, and softens the weight of daily life. It isn't loud, it isn't clingy, it's calm, safe, solid. Now contrast that with toxic relationships, the ones where you feel small, anxious, or chronically unseen. Your brain senses threat in those dynamics. It goes into survival mode. Your dopamine plummets. Your energy becomes reactive. Your mind becomes scattered. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to shrink, to question yourself, to live more on edge than in peace. You don't have to be surrounded by a crowd to be mentally healthy. In fact, sometimes the crowd is the problem. What matters is quality over quantity. One or two people who energize you, who challenge you gently, who make you laugh from the heart. That's more powerful than 50 shallow connections. Because every interaction is an input. And over time, your brain becomes what it's most consistently exposed to. Let's get practical. Start paying attention after every social interaction. How do you feel? Energized or depleted? Centered or scattered? Clear or confused? That's not just emotion, that's biology. And the more you honor those signals, the more you begin to curate an environment that supports your emotional and mental chemistry, not sabotages it. And just as important, be that nourishing presence for others too. Listen without fixing, celebrate without comparison, show up without performance. Be the kind of energy that you wish someone would bring into your life. Because connection is a mirror. And when you offer that kind of space to someone else, you create the conditions for true reciprocity, not obligation, not drama, but mutual elevation. If you're feeling mentally heavy, unmotivated, or emotionally numb, don't just look inward, look around. Who's in your space? Who do you allow access to your mind, your energy, your time? And do they truly deserve that access? It's not about judging others harshly. It's about protecting your peace. Because in the end, your environment, both internal and external, is the architecture of your well-being. And sometimes, the most powerful step toward a healthier, more motivated mind is simply choosing to walk with better people. So ask yourself, who lifts me without effort? Who makes me feel more like myself? Who am I becoming by the company I keep? Because a true friend doesn't exhaust you, they restore you. And that kind of relationship isn't a luxury, it's medicine. 8. Let the sun touch your skin. When was the last time you simply stepped outside? Not to get somewhere, not to be productive, but just to feel the sunlight on your face. We've become so accustomed to artificial environments, fluorescent lights, filtered air, glass screens, that we forget we're not designed for indoor living. We're not just minds and muscles. We're biology. We're chemistry. And sunlight is not just warmth. It's a biological trigger that plays a powerful role in how we feel, think, and function. Here's what science confirms. Sunlight increases the production of vitamin D, which helps regulate mood, immunity, and even sleep. But just as importantly, exposure to natural sunlight increases dopamine levels in the brain, particularly in areas responsible for motivation and focus. Morning light especially stimulates dopamine pathways, helping you feel more awake, more present, more engaged. That's not spiritual fluff, that's biochemistry. And the Stoics, they may not have understood ultraviolet rays or dopamine receptors, but they understood the healing power of nature. They spent time outdoors not to escape, but to align. Marcus Aurelius found clarity under the stars. Seneca reflected on the mountains and rivers. Nature wasn't a backdrop for life, it was life. And they knew, if you want to think clearly, you must return to what is natural. But most of us live severed from that rhythm. We sleep past sunrise, we live behind curtains. We spend our best hours indoors, in chairs, staring at glowing rectangles. And then we wonder why we feel foggy, irritable, restless. It's not weakness, it's misalignment. Your nervous system was built to respond to the sun. It's the original signal for your circadian rhythm, your inner clock. When you ignore it, your dopamine suffers, your sleep suffers, your mood suffers, your willpower weakens. But the solution is simple and beautifully human. Step outside, even for 5 minutes. Even if the sky is cloudy, let your eyes, without sunglasses, absorb natural light. Let your skin feel the breeze. Let your breath slow down. And don't bring your phone, don't check your notifications. Just stand, walk, be. It's in these quiet moments that the body recalibrates and the mind begins to return to center. This is not about sunbathing or turning nature into a productivity hack. It's about remembering that you belong to the world, not just the internet. And the world, the real, physical world, has its own medicine. a kind that no screen, no supplement, no podcast can replicate. The rhythm of light, the warmth on your skin, the sound of leaves, the stillness of a tree. These are not distractions, they are resets. And here's what happens when you make this a habit. Your mood improves, your anxiety lowers, your sleep gets deeper, your thoughts become more spacious. You start to notice the beauty in things you used to rush past. And slowly, your brain begins to thank you with dopamine that flows not from chasing, but from being. So ask yourself, when was the last time I let the sun touch me without distraction? What would change if I made morning light part of my daily rhythm? What if the first thing I reached for wasn't a screen, but the sky? Because what books can't heal, the morning light sometimes can. 9. Do what you love, not just what's expected. When did you stop doing things just because they made you feel alive? When did joy become something you had to schedule, justify, or postpone for when everything else was done? Somewhere along the path to adulthood, many of us traded in what we love for what we should do. And in that trade, something subtle but essential was lost. Our natural connection to dopamine, the kind that flows from doing things that awaken your spirit, not just check off a task. Doing what you love, whether it's painting, cooking, building, writing, gardening, crafting, running, playing music, reading fiction, or just sitting in nature, isn't a luxury. It's a neurological necessity. The activities that fully engage your attention and bring joy from within activate your brain's reward system. They create sustainable dopamine, the kind that doesn't crash after it spikes. And the more time you spend immersed in these passions, the more emotionally balanced, focused, and energized you become. The Stoics believed in duty, yes, but also in eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul. They didn't separate virtue from joy. They believed that to live in alignment with your nature was to live with clarity, purpose, and, yes, pleasure. Not the shallow kind, not indulgence, but the deep fulfillment that comes from expressing who you truly are. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And how often do your thoughts turn toward what truly moves you? Let's make this real. Think of a time when you were completely absorbed in something you loved. Hours passed like minutes. Your worries quieted, your mind sharpened. You weren't thinking about being productive, you were present. That is what doing what you love does to your dopamine. It creates focus without force, energy without strain, clarity without caffeine. But too often, we abandon these activities in the name of responsibility. We tell ourselves we don't have time, that it's not productive, that we'll get to it someday. But here's the truth. If you don't make space for what fuels you, you'll burn out doing what drains you. There is no virtue in self-abandonment, and there is no wisdom in living only for what's expected of you. Start small. Give 15 minutes to something that brings you joy and protect it like it matters, because it does. Let yourself enjoy without explaining. Let yourself create without perfection. Let yourself remember who you were before the world told you what you had to become. And no, this doesn't mean quitting your job or abandoning your duties. It means reclaiming a part of yourself that was never meant to die. Your curiosity, your wonder, your creative fire. Because when you water that part of you, everything else improves. Your mood lifts, your energy increases, your resilience strengthens. Dopamine flows, not from proving, but from being. So ask yourself, what did I once love that I've neglected? What small act of joy can I return to today? Don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you have time. Make time, not because it's urgent, but because it's essential. Because happiness isn't a goal, it's a practice, and it begins by doing what enlivens you without apology. 10. Release stress. Don't just resist it. How much energy do you spend holding it all together, keeping a smile on your face when your chest is heavy, showing up for everyone else while your own thoughts scream for rest, telling yourself to be strong while your body quietly begs for stillness? We live in a world that glorifies resilience, but misunderstands it. True resilience isn't about resisting stress until you collapse. It's about knowing when and how to release it, to let it move through you without owning you. Chronic stress is one of the most dangerous thieves of mental and emotional health. It drains your nervous system, clouds your thinking, and blocks the natural production of dopamine. Over time, it rewires your brain to expect pressure, to fear rest, to associate stillness with failure. And the longer stress stays stuck in your system, the more it controls your mood, your energy, your clarity, and your will to move forward. But the Stoics knew something profound. You can't control what life throws at you, but you can control your response. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That doesn't mean you suppress or ignore what you feel. It means you give yourself the space to process it, wisely, gently, intentionally, instead of pretending it doesn't exist. The problem is, most of us don't release stress. We either store it or escape it. We bottle it up, wear it as tension in our shoulders and jaw, or distract ourselves with noise, scrolling, numbing habits. But emotion is energy. And what isn't released stays. It builds. It turns into anxiety, fatigue, restlessness, or even burnout. Releasing stress isn't weakness. It's the very act that allows your nervous system to return to equilibrium and your dopamine levels to rise again, naturally. So, what does release actually look like? Sometimes it's physical. A long walk, deep breathing, stretching, cold showers, or exercise. Sometimes it's emotional, crying without judgment, journaling without editing, talking to someone who sees you without fixing you. Sometimes it's spiritual, prayer, stillness, gratitude. What matters is not the method, but the intention. You're saying to yourself, "I'm allowed to feel this. I'm safe to release this. I'm not defined by this." And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop trying to resist stress, when you allow it to rise and pass like a wave, you return to yourself. You begin to think clearly again. Your motivation returns. Your emotional bandwidth expands. Because your brain, freed from the grip of survival, starts producing dopamine again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer at war with your experience. Make it a practice, a daily ritual of letting go, even 5 minutes. Put your hand on your heart and breathe deeply. Name what you're holding. Then exhale it, not all at once, but bit by bit. Teach your body the safety of release. Let your stress speak, then let it go. Because when the body rests, the heart breathes. And when the heart breathes, the mind speaks clearly. So ask yourself, where am I carrying stress that no longer belongs to me? What would it feel like to release instead of resist? Don't wait for a breakdown. Choose the wisdom of release now, because your peace isn't something to be earned after the work is done. It's part of the work, and the more you release, the more you rise. Your brain is not broken. Your soul is not lazy. You're not unmotivated. You're simply exhausted from chasing balance in a world that never taught you where to look. But the truth is, everything you need to heal, to focus, to feel alive again. It's already inside you. And dopamine, this small but mighty chemical, is just the messenger. What it responds to isn't noise or perfection. It responds to consistency, to intention, to the small acts of self-respect you choose each day. You don't need a radical transformation. You don't need to fix your entire life overnight. What you need is to return to movement, to nourishment, to stillness, to sunlight, to joy, to friendship, to rest, to the daily decisions that tell your nervous system, I am here, I am healing, I am ready to feel again. The Stoics didn't chase happiness, they cultivated clarity. They didn't numb their emotions, they trained their minds to respond instead of react. And that same clarity is available to you, right now, in your body, in your breath, in the steps you choose after this episode ends. So don't wait for motivation. Build it. Don't wait to feel better. Create the conditions that help you come alive. You have more power than you think. And dopamine, it's not the goal. It's the signal, telling you when you're living in alignment and when you're drifting. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. Because improving your mental and emotional well-being isn't about chasing intensity. It's about honoring the basics, deeply, daily. If this episode helped reset your perspective, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more reflections that reconnect you to what truly matters. And above all, keep showing up. The smallest habits often build the strongest lives.